I'm going to pinch some hot water out your kettle. You don't want to record that.
No, it's fine. I think what he likes most about, like, we constantly talk about this, I think me and Orly, about how he loves getting a reaction out of her.
Yeah.
Like any sort of reaction. Like, it's the same with almost like The Secret of Bear Mountain. I don't like, and all that stuff. I don't need to see two people kiss
to know something.
To know that, to feel something's going on, because like a lot of people need to have that kind of legitimacy to believe a relationship is like something's happening, and I don't really, I don't need like constant like obvious romantic framing. It should be enough the way it is.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's probably my autism, like making that. I got distracted when I was talking about this the other day, and I think, just judging by the show, I think it's very obvious that they kind of like each other.
Yeah, totally.
But obviously it's complicated because their parents are married, so it's like,
yeah,
they find other ways of dealing with it.
Yeah.
In their own ways, and despite how messed up they both are, because they're both bad in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's really kind of good and thing, but she's really not in a lot of ways. She's very, high strung and all that stuff, and
she's quite interfering.
Yeah, interfering, and even though Derek is like labeled as the bad guy, he's like, he almost pretends to be bad, and she almost pretends to be good. And despite how messed up they are, they did like care about each other in their own kind of screwed up ways at times. But at no point in the original show did I feel like it would ever make sense for them to be in a relationship, because I don't feel like it would have worked.
Yeah.
Because they were just so highly strung, and they would have messed it up or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's why like I said, that's why the reboot is so frustrating, because they're finally at a point where it would make sense
for it to happen.
because they're in their 30s and all that, and
what does
they're
Ellie
adults.
think of that?
Orly?
Yeah.
She loves them. She makes videos of them.
I mean, does she want them to have had that moment in the grown up?
We all did.
Okay.
We all knew it wasn't going to happen because the network.
Yeah. They wouldn't go that way with it.
They wouldn't go. So it's like this weird kind of thing where they're not going to go there, but they're going to do something anyway. So it's like, so it's honestly, I feel like, I think if you're going to do it, just do it. Don't beat around the bush. I mean, I like the potential more there, but at the same time, you saying like you don't really want them to go there because the potential was ruined, but at the same time, I kind of do, because it's a natural progression for them.
Of course, yeah.
And it's kind of like the relationship kind of goes static otherwise.
Yeah, I totally.
But they're not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Because. So it's a really weird kind of paradox you're creating.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when I like it because it totally taps into my love of the will they, won't they. There's something like the discrepancy of it and thinking about it, and I personally always feel when they actually do a bit like, so what now? They've done it.
Yeah,
it's over with.
But that's why
you're right.
I was kind of like, because if they're gonna do it, if they would do it, they'd probably wait until the last episode.
Yeah, of course.
Because then they would be able to get away with it.
So have you watched the whole? So was it a film that they did?
They did. It was going to be a series, but it ended up being a film because they wanted to test the audience.
Okay.
To see how many fans they have, and if the film does well, which I hope, they're going to make it into a series where they basically co-parent their own kids together. So.
Oh. very cool.
Because they had kids with other people.
Yeah.
Some people think it's about a bit unbelievable, but I don't know. I think
so they
it
had
makes
parents with other people, but they've split up with their partners.
I think Derek probably just impregnates us. It's implied that Derek just impregnates someone in college, and he just has a daughter. He travels around.
Okay.
In like Europe and stuff, which fits his vibe. And Casey's now a lawyer
That fits her
vibe. Who has like 3 kids.
Okay.
But her husband works overseas.
Okay.
So
she's on her own a lot.
She's on her own, and so like they haven't spoken to each other in years, but they both have this idea of like dropping the kids off with the parents to get a break, and they both meet each other instead.
Yeah.
And they have to figure out a way of like co-parenting their own kids together. So it's like they're trying to make them married, but not. They're still loitering with the relationship.
I like that.
It's quite funny, but it makes a kind of like hilarious dynamic because it's just like they're basically married, but they're not married.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
They're acting like they're taking care of they're doing all the stuff without without the physical stuff. So it's like
that's really funny.
That's really hilarious.
Yeah.
A lot of people. There's one video I saw of someone who didn't watch the show.
Yeah.
That was criticizing the relationship that they had. Okay, so I think that they was describing this video was saying like, okay, so they're now living together platonically.
Yeah.
But they're not married, and they were saying how weird it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a way of getting it's a way of getting like siblings together without actually doing it.
No, it's a bit of a cheeky.
It's a very
cheeky, chappy way of going about things. I kind of like it though.
I think because in the original show, the writers they didn't obviously plan to do it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where things kind of just evolve on their own.
Yeah.
You know, it's a really weird like writing choice. They kept on making all these decisions with the writing, and Mike and Ash kept on like playing with it, and you have Life with Derek, basically that show, as a result. So I think in the reboot, the writers are much more aware, and the relationship between.
Well, because they've seen the aftermath, they've seen the reactions from the fans.
And it's the only thing that's kept the fan base thriving for like 15 years. Like non-stop, and all that. I mean, and it's inspired all these like storylines on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just see the result.
That's really interesting.
That's really it came from this show that aired on Disney.
Why not?
It's quite funny.
Yeah.
So obviously in the reboot you can actually really tell by rebooting the original show and in the reboot movie. The writers are much more aware now.
Yeah.
So the interactions in the movie are feel more intentional.
Yeah.
Like they're basically acting like a married couple, but they can't obviously go there because of the network and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that really interesting.
Yeah.
It's very hilarious and weird, but I think it's kind of interesting enough at the same time. As long as they don't put them with random people.
Yeah. Then
that's fine, because they did that constantly in the original show. They would just put them with random people because they wanted to distract from what was really going on.
Yeah.
And they would do all these things where they would try to make them like do sibling things, but obviously they couldn't do that because Mike and Ashley's chemistry was just too strong. It was just too strong, and it pushed in the other direction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've seen those kind of things happen on TV before where it's like, where they kind of just like, they're trying to make 2 actors have platonic chemistry, but they can't do it. But I think with that, it's a sort of, I've seen that kind of thing happen before, and I was like, okay, so they just look good together on the screen. Because I saw that with one show, and it's like, they were brother and sister, and it's like, okay, they look really good and good together on the screen, but I was able to take that in my mind because they still relatively acted like brother and sister, even though they look good on the screen.
Yeah.
But with this, they just don't.
Yeah.
At all. Yeah. Like at no point in the show I feel like I was watching
a brother and sister.
Like they just felt like teenagers in that randomly lived in the same house.
Yeah.
That kind of got on their nerves a bit, and they were constantly in each other's business all the time.
Yeah.
That's the thing that me and my sister were kind of confused about. They were always in each other's business.
Yeah.
Like, even when they didn't need to, it's like I showed you in that kind of, that episode where they're in this, like, the family's gone away.
Yeah.
And they're alone together in the house.
Yeah.
And they're in each other's business.
Totally.
All the time. And it's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
And then they circle each other, and it's like, wait, are they gonna kiss? Oh my god! Oh no, they're not. They didn't kiss. Okay.
Do it.
They didn't do it.
The what if they had, if it had been.
I think if it had been, because actually Life with Derek was actually quite mature.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if it did air on another network, they probably would have done something with it.
Yeah.
But obviously they have, it's kind of like the demographic was a bit too young at the time.
Yeah.
I think the reboot actually it aged up the demographic, so it's like now 8 to 12 now. So it's like it was like PG instead of a G-rated show.
Yeah.
So they were able to. It was quite funny in the reboot because I was like so surprised how many things they were getting away with, like. They were like joking about swearing and all that stuff, and which didn't really happen in the original show. I think there was a few things about drugs and all that stuff, but there wasn't really like it had that mature kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
And I think it would have done a lot better if it had been on a different network. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I feel like it could have been something like Modern Family, where I don't know if you watched that show. I haven't watched that show either, but it was like a family show where it was like it was a family being raised by two dads and stuff. I think it would have done a lot better in a lot of ways if it had been on a different network. Mm-hmm. Much mature. They did try it. There was like a reboot they were doing a few years ago, not even a few years ago, 9 years ago. They were going to bring it back, but it was on a different network. It was going to be on a much mature network, but the network rejected it because it wasn't for them, and I was like, oh my god, we could have had it all this time, but the network rejected it. So it's this but then the reboot is now. It's still on the same network that it aired originally, so they're not. This is kind of the predicament you're in. Yeah. Having to, like thing. So it's like, so I feel like it could have done well if it was on another network. But I'm so glad I showed you it because. This is something it's a show that's really special to me, not just because of the relationship, obviously, but it was just, I find it really relatable. I love all the dynamics as well, and I love how her relationship with her sister is very similar to how me and Lizzie were when we were younger. We were very close and stuff, so it's kind of like, it's very much, feels very much
familiar to you.
Very familiar to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, they do. I like how she looks out for her little sister and things like that. Like I like that too. There's a real nice feeling in it.
Yeah, but it's just a show that's really, really quite special to me. So I really hope the movie does well. Yeah. Because we were all kind of like in the fan base, but we were all kind of like, okay, because we saw the plot. So okay, can we all collectively agree to sort of like support this fact, Mike and Ash, and then just pretend it doesn't exist afterwards? But then we won't want to watch the movie. It's like, oh, it's quite good. Let's hope we do that. So I was like, I'm so. It was quite funny how we were all like kind of hating the movie before it even came out, but when we watched it, it was like, okay, that was actually really good. So that's basically why I had no sleep that day, because it was just and I got really hyped up as well.
So have you been alright since?
I've been quite calmer as well.
Yeah. Is it like this thing of this build up to watching something and then the process of then kind of like...
I'm sorry to talk about this.
It's alright.
But I've been wanting to talk about this for ages, like, not even that, I've been years. I've been holding this in for so long.